So, woman of the hour, Casey O'Neill. Can I ask, couple of days removed from your first UFC win, how are you feeling right now?
I feel good, obviously, like very relieved and very happy to have that first one out of the way and have it go well. Can ask for, better thing than a finish in your first one. So it was good, but the novelty of it is wearing off for sure. And I just want to get back into the gym and start training for the next one and not rest on my laurels, just make sure I get another one quickly.
Superb. And let's very briefly talk about the matchup, if you like.
Mhm.
What was the game plan going into this fight against Shana Dobson? What were you looking to impose, and do you feel like you completed the game plan?
Yeah, so we sat down and watched her, obviously, as we got the contract, and decided that our striking was going to be pretty similar. She was bigger than me, so we were thinking maybe like her strength she would be stronger than me and our striking would be similar, but we knew that the ground game would be a wash. Like, and I know that in the 125 division, there's not that many girls that have grappling the way that I grapple. So we knew that if we took her to the ground, we'd be able to overwhelm her and drown her down there, and eventually she would stop moving and one out. And I think that the game plan worked to a T, because that seems to be what happened.
As you say, yeah, to a T. I don't think if this was said beforehand, that would have been the ultimate prediction.
I actually did like a couple of podcasts beforehand. I'm not sure if you saw, where I told everybody that I was going to finish her in the second round by elbows on mount. And I did. So if anybody listened to me and believed me and bet money, I think that they would have won big on that.
I did. I think I did see that a couple of days before. Yeah, I think I did. Yeah.
See, I'm out here calling it.
Mr. Casey.
Yeah.
Can I ask as well, Dobson's previous fight before this was against another very highly touted prospect, and Maria Agapova. I believe that was the biggest upset win of the UFC in 2020. Did that play on your mind at all? The potential for an upset, or for Dobson to overcome the odds?
Not so much. Like, I knew that she would have some confidence from that going forward. So I knew that probably she would fight more confidently and be more aggressive. That's sort of what I took away from that. But at the end of the day, when you watch that fight back, I think it was a mistake on Maria's part. I'm not saying that Shayna's not tough or Shayna's not a good fighter, but the way that Maria came out in that fight and just sort of like completely spent her gas tank in the first round, I think that really worked to Shayna's favor, and that's sort of how she won that fight.
Yeah.
But yeah, I knew she would have confidence coming off of it, but I knew that I am a similar fighter to me, Maria, with just a lot better of a gas tank, and I don't get tired. So I knew that I would be able to lure into this false sense of security and just take her to where she couldn't swim.
Yeah, superb. Can I ask as well, how was camp? How was the nerves going into this UFC debut? Was it any different at all, or was it just much of the same?
It was much of the same throughout camp. Obviously you're thinking like, this is the biggest fight of my life and stuff like that, but you kind of got to treat it like any other fight, otherwise that becomes overwhelming. So I spent majority of my camp treating it like it was any other fight. I would say that the week that I got to the UFC sort of like fight week, it was different, and I was a lot more nervous. I'm never nervous in fight week, and I just started like getting nervous and thinking like, shit, I'm either about to make my dreams come true or fuck up on live TV in front of everyone, and like whichever way happens, I'm never gonna like get a second chance at this first opportunity, I guess. So yeah. And then out the back and sort of in the cage, I think you could tell I was really nervous, which is weird for me. But it took me a couple of minutes and I was warmed up and I was back to being myself, I think.
I've spoke to a lot of debuting UFC fighters in this kind of COVID quarantine period, if you like. And what some have said to me is that they feel less nervous without the crowd, and sort of that pressure of the crowd, if you like. Did that play a part at all? Was it weird fighting in an empty arena in what I presume is the biggest mixed martial arts fight of your life?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess it was better that there was no crowd there because I was already nervous and freaking out. So I think that if there was a crowd there, it would have been a little bit worse. But it's it's almost got its pros and cons for both sides because it is so quiet that you can hear your coaches, but then it's also so quiet that you can't do anything but stand there and think as you're waiting for the fight to start, and it's a bit cold because there's like a lack of atmosphere, I guess, like um so yeah, I don't know. I really like the fans. Like the fans always bring me a good like energy. So I like fighting better with fans, but it wasn't a terrible experience. I'm not gonna pretend that I could hear my coaches at all because I think I was blacked out through the whole fight, but it was an experience for sure, and I'm glad I got to experience it.
Say then you were blacked out throughout the fight. Talk to me a little bit about that. What was that experience like, the actual fight, if you like?
Well, I was standing there before the fight started, and I was like, "You're just gonna have to go in hard and fast, how you always do, and you'll find your footing." So I think not complete fight, I was blacked out, but I would say the majority of the first round, I was sort of just fighting off instincts. Second round was more of myself, but yeah, I don't know. It was strange. I could hear her corner a lot. Like when I've watched the fight back, I think it was part of her game plan to stay in her corner because you watch the fight and I come running to her side and she just sort of stays there and doesn't really meet me in the middle. So I could hear a bunch of her coaches cornering her, like when I was on her back, and they'd be like, "She's about to switch to mine." I'm like, "Shut up!" Like, let me do it. I was trying to move her away, but I couldn't really hear my corner that well. But it also is the first time I've fought with them in my corner, like my new coaches since being in Vegas. So it was a bit of a learning process for everything. Everything was new, and I'd say I did pretty well under the circumstances.
The argument could be made that with this, empty arena, the situation we've got now, that every fighter is on a level playing field, because every fighter who was fought in this period has probably, with the exception of maybe amateur fighters, haven't fought in an empty arena. So maybe what we're talking about debuting fighters versus more experienced fighters, that goes out the window a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think so, but I know she'd already had one with Maria in the quiet, so she knew, and then that was also her fifth UFC fight, so she was a little bit more calm than me. But yeah, I see what you're saying, it definitely is. But also if you're debuting, you put the pressure on yourself. That like the pressure is coming from internal. Any fighter who makes it to the UFC, like obviously wants it so bad. So once you're like at that point where you're about to fight, it's kind of hard to put yourself in a if I lose, I lose, or if I win, I win sort of attitude. It's all about winning. I wasn't leaving there if I didn't win, so I would have just sat there and waited for the next week and fought again. But yeah.
We can say this now the fight has passed. What did you feel more nervous for, your professional debut or your UFC debut?
Definitely the UFC debut, like the professional debut, I had been trying to go pro for a long time and my coaches were the ones holding me back. And when it got to that point, I think I was like, I knew I was so ready and I'd beaten every girl that was in Australia that got put in front of me, and then the UFC debut comes with like people who are obviously at a higher level than I've fought, and there's obviously a lot more eyes than there's ever been on me. If I'd lost my professional debut, I could have just went back to my day job and continued making coffee and nobody would be the wiser, but now there's a lot more people that can see when you fail, so you feel that extra pressure to do well.
Is that the main thing, the extra pressure, in terms of, obviously what we're talking about is an empty arena, we've lingered that point, but in terms of viewership, in terms of social media and all them external factors, if you like?
Yeah, so I'm like a big mental fighter, I put like pressure on myself. So not even external pressure, like internal pressure. I've been telling everybody that I deserve to be here for a while. So I was like at that point where it was time to show that. So I think that was the main pressure. But yeah, I try not to pay too much attention to the social media anymore either. I've got so many best friends and so many haters on there that I could fill a whole arena with them once the fans come back. But yeah, I'm not too worried about what other people think. It's more so like me and my immediate circle and everything. You know, I want to prove to myself that I can do this, and prove to, you know, my family that I didn't make bad choices by leaving them when I was 17 to chase a dream.
Yeah. And you mentioned then that this was your first fight in Las Vegas, I presume, with Extreme Couture.
Yeah.
How much did making the move there to that gym, you think, improve your skill set?
I mean, my striking feels, not that you've seen it in the fight, but my striking has improved so much since being here and working under Eddie Baracco and Coach Giff. I would love to be able to show that in my next fight, but yeah, I think the nerves got the better of me and I just wanted to hold on to her. But yeah, so I've always moved around. Like before this, I was in Thailand by myself, and I think that I sort of grow when I put myself in uncomfortable situations. And that was one thing that I took from moving to Extreme. You know, I got so much better just by having to figure everything out on my own and being the new person again and having to prove myself in the gym and everything like that. So I think that also having new coaches again teaches you more. So the amount of times that I've switched gyms and gotten new coaches, I've been able to learn a lot more, a lot faster.
Who were you working most with? So obviously there's a lot of notable names out of Extreme Couture. For this camp, who were you working most with in terms of fighters, for sparring and such?
Not so much any of the big names. You know, there's a lot of littler guys at Extreme that are really good that are just coming up, like early pros. So I like to work with boys a lot more than I like to work with girls. It's just a lot less drama, a lot less emotional. So yeah, I was just going with all the boys that were around and anybody who wanted to go. You know, I'm new here still, so it wasn't like I found partners that I wanted to work with per se. So yeah, just a bit of everyone.
Yeah, superb. Now, last Saturday, you broke a lot of personal records, I would argue. First UFC debut, first UFC win, first UFC finish. What did it feel like when the ref stopped that fight and pulled it off, and it was mission accomplished to a certain extent?
Yeah, it was super surreal, as you can tell with the emotions that came out at the end. You know, like there was relief, there was like disbelief, there was excitement, you know, like shock almost, because I had been a bit blacked out throughout the whole thing, and then just like happiness, and yeah, just like a lot of things. You know, a lot of the sacrifices that I made had like been paid off, you know. So it's just the first step, but it really felt like it was a good first step. It was a step in the direction that I wanted, obviously. So I was really emotional at the end. I didn't want to cry on live TV, but I ended up happening, and people seem to have enjoyed the fact that it was just raw emotion. And I guess, I don't know.
Yeah, it will never work against you, I don't suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to put myself through the camera, and if people like it, they like it, and if they don't, they don't.
Yeah,
they can eat shit and die.
And something you mentioned then, which I wanted to maybe touch on, was if we move from present a little bit to the future.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at the stats on the UFC's website, and with the exception of the women's featherweight division, which isn't really a division, I would argue, the UFC women's flyweight division actually has the smallest amount of competitors. How fast do you want to move up this division? Do you want to mature and grow your skill set, or do you want to get to ranked fights or the notable names as fast as you can? What do you want to do in that sense?
So there's like half of me wants to do one and half wants to do the other, but I think that the smartest thing for me, only being 23 years old, is to fight from the bottom of the division to the top. I want to be in this sport for a long time. So I think that I want to like get in there and start like fighting regularly. You know, I feel like that'll help my confidence and it'll help my skill set, obviously. So yeah, fighting from the bottom to the top of the division is what I want to do. You know, I want to get in there 3 or 4 times a year and mix it up and continue to get better. And then eventually, once I get to that belt and win that belt, I'll be good enough that nobody will be able to take it from me. So yeah, that's the plan, is to slow burn, build myself and build my name and build my skill set and make sure that people know that I'm must watch TV and.
And we are only in February now, and I would argue if we talk about a year's checklist, you have checked off a good chunk of that in terms of debut, in terms of first win, in terms of first finish. What else do you want to get out of 2021? Is there a goal in mind, or is it just see what happens to a certain extent?
I would like 3 more fights and 3 more finishes. That's the goal, 3 fights, 3 finishes. And anything outside of that will not do for me, So if they give me 2 fights, I'll get 2 fights and 2 finishes. If they give me 3, or if they give me 4, I'm on their time now, So Mick knows that I want to be active, and obviously Danny, my manager, knows that I want to be active. I'm in his ear every day about it. So yeah, I just want to fight a couple more times this year and just really make a name for myself and become a problem in the flyweight division.
This period has brought up stars who have got a lot of fights in and kind of established their names. The best example of that, I would say, would be Kevin Holland, 5-0, I believe 4 finishes. Do you think there is a benefit of being based in Las Vegas, where you can maybe get them short notice calls, or maybe have a little bit closer to the UFC PI, that you could fall into some opportunities like that?
Yeah, 100%. That's one of the main reasons that I'm staying in Las Vegas, and I've made it known that that's why I'm staying in Las Vegas. And I like to think of myself as sort of the female Kevin Holland, in that sense. I'm ready to jump in and fight at any time as well. So just give me a couple of weeks to get my weight right, and I'm ready to go.
Superb. Well, I very much appreciate you talking to me today. It was an absolute privilege, and I very much thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'm sorry for being late again.
Don't apologize. Before we finish, how can people find you on social media?
Ken Casey MMA on Twitter and Instagram.
And before we finish, is there anything you would like to say or sign off with at all?
No, just make sure that you keep watching the fights. I'm only going to get better from there. That was me just dipping my toes in the water. And like I said, I'm down to just fully submerge myself and start swimming around and beating all these girls, So yeah, I'm excited for what's next.
And we're excited to watch. Casey, thanks for your time today.
Thank you.